AI React podcast, where we react to everything and anything. I'm Isaac, and with me, as always, is Annie.
Hey, everyone.
So, Annie, today we're diving deep into a classic.
Ooh, a classic.
N.W.A.'s Straight Outta Compton. This album didn't just change hip-hop, it kind of like rewrote the rules.
It really did.
And we've got excerpts from the album's lyrics on Leetrist.com and also the album's Wikipedia page. So we're going deep into the impact, the controversy, and of course the music itself.
So set the stage for me here. What was going on in the music world when this dropped?
So think about the hip-hop scene back in the mid-'80s. You know, the East Coast was king.
Right.
Lots of wordplay,
Yeah.
clever sampling.
I remember that.
But L.A. was all about that electro and party vibe.
Oh, yeah, like totally different.
And then Ice-T drops 6 in the morning, and things start to shift.
6 in the morning. That's a game changer.
Yeah, it was raw,
Yeah.
real, and paved the way for what we now call gangsta rap.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where N.W.A. comes in, right?
Exactly. They come from this like changing landscape, drawing from both East Coast and West Coast influences. And then boom, Straight Outta Compton.
Straight Outta Compton. I mean, what a way to announce yourself to the world, right?
It really was.
And, you know, you think about those opening lines. Straight Outta Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube from the gang called Niggas with Attitudes. It's a statement. It's confrontational. It's them saying like, hey, world, we're here.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Musically, what made it stand out?
Well, they used the Roland TR 808 drum machine that gave it that, you know, that booming bass, those like synthesized sounds. It was so different from what was popular then.
It was so raw. And then there's the lyrics.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the lyrics.
N.W.A. didn't hold back.
Not at all.
They talked about street life, violence, police brutality.
Things that most people weren't rapping about. Not on such a huge stage anyway.
Yeah, it was a raw, unflinching look at life in Compton. Like in Fuck That. Police.
Oh my God.
That song. They called out police harassment, racial profiling.
And it resonated, especially with marginalized communities.
But it also caused like a huge uproar.
Oh, absolutely.
The FBI got involved.
Yeah.
People were debating like censorship.
Yeah, it really brought up the question of when does freedom of expression cross the line?
It's a good question. When does it?
Is it ever right to censor art, even if it's offensive?
Well, and on that note,
Yeah.
I mean, was there more to the album than just anger?
Yeah.
Confrontation. I'm thinking about Express Yourself.
You know, Express Yourself is a really interesting track because musically it's more upbeat. It's even funky.
Yeah.
And the lyrics promote individuality and freedom of expression. It's like a counterpoint to all that aggression.
Yeah. So how do we reconcile these two sides?
Right.
On one hand, they're defiant and angry,
Yeah.
but then they're also encouraging individuality.
It's complex, you know? They were products of a system that was holding them down, but they still found ways to express themselves and push against that.
And there's the storytelling. I mean, these weren't just random rhymes. There was depth there.
Yeah.
A narrative.
Take Dopeman, for example. It's about the crack epidemic and how it devastated the community.
Yeah.
And the lyrics paint a picture of the drug trade's grip on the streets. He's got the clientele niggas standing in line. It's vivid.
Wow. And that's not glorifying it.
No.
But it's not shying away either.
Not at all.
But then you have a song like Gangsta Gangsta. And that's where it gets tricky. Because you could see that as glorifying the lifestyle.
But I disagree. You have to remember the context.
Okay.
This was their reality.
Yeah.
They were reflecting what they saw and lived.
Okay.
It was their way of saying, this is Compton, this is what we deal with. They weren't saying it was good, but they weren't sugarcoating it either.
Right. It was real.
Exactly. It was their truth.
Okay, I see that. So it was more about just showing what was happening.
Exactly.
And less about saying if it was right or wrong.
Exactly.
It was just their reality.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made Straight Outta Compton so powerful.
I agree.
It was just raw, unfiltered.
Yeah, it was like they were ripping off a Band-Aid and forcing America to see what was really going on.
Yeah, in places like Compton.
Places that a lot of people had never even thought about.
Right, exactly.
And it connected with people, especially people who felt ignored.
Yeah, who felt marginalized.
Exactly.
But let's shift gears a little and talk about the music. I mean,
Yeah.
this album was huge. It went platinum.
It did.
And with barely any radio play.
That's crazy.
How did they do that?
It was all word of mouth.
Really?
This was before the internet, social media.
Right.
So people found out about N.W.A. through mixtapes.
Oh, wow.
Through friends. It was like this underground movement.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. And it tapped into something that people were hungry for.
Yeah.
Something real, something that challenged the way things were.
And N.W.A. delivered.
They did.
They weren't afraid to be controversial.
Not at all.
Okay, so let's talk about the individuals in the group.
Okay.
You had Ice Cube, who was already known for his lyrics.
And his social commentary.
Ice Cube brought this sharp wit and a powerful voice.
Yeah.
You know his lyrics on Straight Outta Compton? Gangsta, gangsta. They're full of vivid imagery.
Yeah.
And social commentary.
And then you have MC Ren, who brought that, like, darker, more intense style.
Yeah, MC Ren was menacing.
Right.
His rhymes on quiet, on the set. They're aggressive. In your face.
Yeah. And then there's Eazy-E. Can't forget Eazy.
The Godfather.
He brought that streetwise swagger.
Oh, yeah.
That authenticity.
He was Compton. He had lived what they were rapping about, and that gave their music a realness that you couldn't fake.
Totally. It was like the perfect storm of talent,
Yeah.
ambition, raw energy, and
Yeah.
it just exploded.
They weren't afraid to push boundaries musically,
Yeah.
lyrically.
Yeah, and Straight Outta Compton changed the game.
Absolutely.
I mean, its influence is still felt today,
for sure.
but has that influence been entirely positive?
That's a good question. Some people argue that gangsta rap glorifies violence and misogyny.
It's complicated. You have to remember the context. N.W.A. were products of their environment.
Right.
And they reflected that environment in their music.
So you're saying they were holding a mirror up to society.
Exactly. They weren't trying to preach or give answers.
Mhm.
They were just showing the world what it was like to grow up in a place like Compton.
In the 80s.
Right, in the 80s. And that's what makes the album so important.
Okay.
It's a document of a time and place. And it started a conversation about race, class, and power that we're still having today.
Yeah. And that's a conversation we need to keep having.
Absolutely.
I mean, the issues that N.W.A. raised, police brutality, poverty, systemic racism, there's still problems today.
Unfortunately, they are. But that's the power of art.
Yeah.
It can transcend time and place. It speaks to those universal truths and forces us to look at things that make us uncomfortable.
And Straight Outta Compton did that.
It did. It really did. And
So what do you think is the album's lasting legacy? How will people remember it 50 years from now?
oh, that's a tough one. Let me think for a second. It'll be remembered as the album that changed hip-hop.
As like a cultural touchstone
Definitely.
that sparked these really important conversations about race, class, and power in America.
It made people listen, whether they wanted to or not.
And it gave a voice to people who didn't have one. It showed the world that even when things are hard,
Right.
even in these like marginalized communities,
Yeah.
there's beauty and creativity.
And that's what art is all about, right?
Yeah.
It's about change.
It can challenge us, inspire us, make us think differently about the world.
Exactly.
And Straight Outta Compton definitely did that.
For sure.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive,
Okay.
I have one question for you.
Yeah. What is it?
What's the most important takeaway from Straight Outta Compton? Like what message or idea has stuck with you?
I think it's the idea that your voice matters. No matter who you are, where you come from, or what your situation is, you have a story, and it deserves to be heard.
That's powerful.
And sometimes those stories are the ones that challenge us the most.
Right.
The ones that make people uncomfortable, because those are the stories that can really change things.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Straight Outta Compton.
Of course.
It's been a trip.
It's always great to revisit this album.
For those of you listening, go back and listen to Straight Outta Compton again. But this time, listen closely. Pay attention to the lyrics, the music,
Yeah.
the stories they're telling,
Yeah.
and think about how it still speaks to us today.
Almost 40 years later.
Yeah,
Because the things they were talking about back then are still problems today.
unfortunately.
And that message of empowerment, of speaking truth to power, that's more important than ever.
Absolutely. So find your voice and make it heard. Thanks for listening.
And as always, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. The podcast sponsor is in the description below, so go and check them out. Thanks. It'll be remembered as like a groundbreaking album, an album that changed the course of hip-hop.
Yeah, and as a cultural touchstone, that sparked all these important conversations
Absolutely.
about race, class, and power in America.
It forced people to listen, even if they didn't want to.
And it gave a voice to the voiceless. You know, it showed that even in the face of adversity, even in these like really marginalized communities, there's beauty and creativity.
And power.
Yeah.
And that's what art can do, right?
Exactly.
It can be a powerful tool for change.
It can challenge us, inspire us, make us think differently about the world.
But Straight Outta Compton did all of that.
It really did. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Straight Outta Compton,
Okay.
I'm left with one question for you.
Shoot.
What do you think is the most important takeaway from Straight Outta Compton? What message or idea do you think has resonated the most, even decades later?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's the idea that your voice matters.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, where you come from, or what your circumstances are. You have a story to tell. And that story deserves to be heard.
And sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that challenge the status quo, the ones that make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, because those are the stories that can really spark change.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into N.W.A.'s Straight Outta Compton.
It was my pleasure.
It's been an amazing journey. And I hope you learned something new along the way.
Me too. It's always fascinating to revisit this album.
And for those of you listening, we encourage you to go back and listen to Straight Outta Compton with fresh ears. Really pay attention to the lyrics, the music, the stories being told.
Yeah, dive into it.
And think about how this album continues to resonate today.
Almost 40 years later.
Yeah, crazy, right?
It's amazing.
Because the issues N.W.A. addressed in their music are still relevant today.
Unfortunately, yes.
And their message of empowerment, of speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
It's more important than ever.
It really is.
So go out there, find your voice, and make it heard. Thanks for listening.
And as always, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. The podcast sponsor is in the description below, so go and check them out. Thanks.